Books make you hope. Books make you dream. Books make you laugh. Books make you scream. This is the Books That Make You show, discussing books with authors and experts, unraveling the inner pages of all the books that help make us who we are.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Desiree Duffy, and it is time for the Books That Make You show. And today, we are talking about books that make you stand at the intersection of technology and society and wonder about the science of God and if time travel is possible. Mark J. Rose is a scientist who believes in both evolution and God, and he's also an author, and he takes readers back in time with his historical science fiction series, Matt Miller and the Colonies. Now, he is also an adventurer who travels to the places that he writes about and studies. Mark has a doctorate in pharmaceutical chemistry and is a director of research and development at a startup biotech company. Architect is the fourth book in the Matt Miller and the Colonies historical sci-fi book series, and it's just released, and fans couldn't be more excited. Today, we're going to find out why. Hi, Mark. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Desiree. Great to be here. Thank you so much for sitting down and talking with me.
Yeah, you bet. So this is book 4 in the series, and this whole series has been something I was there, and I remember reading the first book and just being like, wow, this is such a cool concept. And you've developed this ravenous fan base, and with the release of Architect, you just gotta tell me, how does it feel to wrap up this series in this way?
Well, I can't say that I know that the series is wrapped up, but I have to say that it is very fulfilling to have finished this fourth book. There was a point where I wasn't quite sure whether I was going to finish it, whether I was interested in writing it. And then, it got to a point where it's some parts of the story needed to be put down on paper. And so I'd say it feels quite good, actually, to get to this point.
Now, one of the things that you do oh so well is you're historically accurate. And that's not easy when you're writing historical fiction. But you have the added benefit, I guess, of also writing something that's sci-fi and science-based. How do you weave all of that together? Because that sounds like quite an undertaking for an author.
Well, it all kind of comes together like, maybe the legs of a three-pronged stool. You wind up first reading about the times that your characters are going to be interacting, right? And trying to, get very historically accurate, with the time frame. And then, reading biographies, you wind up learning about the kinds of people that your characters will interact with. And then you now have to bring your fictional aspects, your characters, and you have to say, okay, they're going to react both with these historical characters, and they're going to interact in this historical setting. And then it all kind of comes together to form a picture. I think that you don't do them all together, but then kind of ultimately, maybe it's your brain does it. It kind of merges everything together, and now you have, a setting, a place, a time, and a story.
Now, I want to get into some of the places, the historical places that you visited while doing your research. But first, how about if you give us the lay of the land? So we've got this guy, Matt Miller. Tell us about the setup and the premise and where he's at in space and time.
Well, so he wakes up in 1762 Virginia. The reason that I picked 1762 Virginia was that this is around the time that the Enlightenment was coming into the colonies from Scotland. People were starting to think a little bit differently about human rights, the rights of man, kinds of all these things you think about when you think about the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States. And this is a decade leading up to the American Revolution, when the Enlightenment was influencing a lot of people and saying, hey, this is how we want to govern ourselves. And it really was a magical time. And Virginia just happened to be sort of this, I'd say, a powder keg of this explosion of the Enlightenment, this explosion of what it meant to be self-governing. And so I put Matt in the middle of this. And the main character, Matt Miller, he wakes up in the middle of this time of rapid change, and I wanted to see again how he would interact with these characters within this setting, knowing what he knows, but then not knowing a whole lot about how to survive in 1762. The skill set has to be way different during that time. And so then I follow him through that time in history. Virginia just happens to be a place where a lot of the historical characters, founding fathers, the people that we read about in history books. And so I set him down in Virginia. I have him go to Philadelphia, which is also an epicenter for the Enlightenment and historical characters. Philadelphia is the largest city in the colonies. So lots of cool things going on there. And then I have him, again, kind of interacting in all these different settings with all these different characters that are going to be important, that people are going to know about. And then it was very important to me, not only does he interact with them, but he also interacts in a historically accurate way. And so when Matt goes someplace and he meets somebody, that person is documented to have been there. He's living there. She's living there. They're doing something in particular where Matt is at any given time.
You do that oh so well. And that's what makes historical fiction fun, right? The plausibility that could have happened because, like you said, that person was really there. You also have this way of weaving in some things that you just don't think about, but you thought of them. I remember the first book, for example, brushing your teeth and doing just some very seemingly mundane, ordinary things. It was so much different back then. You didn't have your tube of toothpaste and your toothbrush in the same way. So how did you come up with some of the more just everyday types of things? Did you research that as well?
Well, the point is that Matt Miller has to survive in the period that he's in. And when he wakes up in 1762 Virginia, he doesn't have any skills that are relevant to the time. He's not a farmer. He's not a blacksmith. And so people are kind of looking at him and going, how are you going to make a living? There's no way. And, there's this idea that he knows all these things. One of these, and he's a pharmaceutical chemist, and so he's probably thought about certain things like medicines. He's thought about dentistry, and I kind of made it a challenge for him to come into this period and do these simple things, not have the right tools to do them, and say, okay, if I wanted to write with maybe a ballpoint pen. Would I invent one? When everybody writes with quills. If I wanted to brush my teeth, and most colonials at the time didn't brush their teeth, they just used maybe an old rag to wipe their teeth. How would he go about inventing the things that he needed to brush his teeth? And the whole tooth thing actually wound up with my dentist. And I sat with my dentist during a dental exam, and we used to talk a lot about the biotech industry, and he was always interested in stuff, and he owed me some answers to some questions. And I eventually sat down with him and I talked to him. Okay, what did you learn in dentistry school about tooth care, and what's the history, and how did colonials brush their teeth? And he told me what he knew, and I did some more research and realized that, well, this might be a cool kind of thing. A simple invention for him to maybe make a few dollars back in colonial times. But yeah, so every kind of piece of it really wound up having some research that I had to do to understand, okay, what did they have? And what could Matt possibly do in that time, with the tools that were available to him?
Yeah, and that just enriches the story so much. And you've gone to places like Benjamin Franklin's house, not in the US, but in London when you were researching the Virginian. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so that was actually part of, I was going on a business trip for my job in biotech, and I was with another guy. And the way that we plan these trips is that since it takes so long, a lot of our laboratories were over in Europe. Since it takes so long to get there, usually we'll have a weekend free. And I told this guy, look, I want to go see Ben Franklin's house so Ben Franklin was in London, and he was a diplomat, right? And so he was dealing with Parliament, and he was actually a bit of a loyalist. He wanted the American colonies to get along with England. He wasn't looking for a revolution, so he spent a lot of time in London. They loved him in London, but he had a house in London, and he had lived there for a couple of years. And so the Ben Franklin Society found this house, and they reconditioned it, and did all the things and made it historically accurate. And so I asked this guy that I was with. I said, "Look, I want to really go see Ben Franklin's house." And he's like, "Well, why do you want to do that?" And I said, "Just don't worry about it." And I like to keep the author and my biotech job a little bit separate. So it was all kind of a mystery to him. But we did wind up going through and having a nearly a private tour, because it's not like a big tourist trap, Ben Franklin's house in London. And so we went into all the nooks and crannies, all the different rooms, felt the wood, felt the vibrations, and it really kind of gives you. And I don't understand why this is, why we have to go visit places and touch things and experience what's physically there. I probably could have easily done this using Google, but it was good to kind of go there and walk the same steps that Ben Franklin walked, and get that feeling. And then what I did then is I included his house as a major setting in the third book, Virginian.
And I think you're right. You really can't replace that feeling of being in a place. And I don't know, there's just a sense of history when you do that, you're right. You can't duplicate that using Google Maps. As cool as that technology is, I don't think that in-person experience could ever be replaced. Some of the other places, there's a bunch of them that you've gone to. You even visited, for example, tell me about visiting St. John's Church in Richmond. And that's where the main characters in your book were. Actually, I don't want to give away the spoilers. So that's where something happened to the main characters in your book. You want to talk about visiting that church?
Well, I will say this. I'll say that Matt Miller realizes that he's in 1762, just as he goes to sit down in church. And this is at St. John's Church in Richmond. The church is still there, and it's still an active congregation, but they have this kind of unique setting. I'll reuse the word, for a church, because not only is it a historical landmark with a cemetery that has famous founding members or people from the colonial times buried in its churchyard, but it also has, again, this active congregation. And so they kind of deal with both. But I wanted to go and I wanted to feel this church. I wanted to see if it is a big part of the first story, just because churches we're a big part of colonial society. Everybody had to go to church on Sunday. This is where they gathered together as a community. And I wanted to see exactly where my character would be sitting, where he would be walking, and get that feel. And this idea that you have to be somewhere to feel it, or you have to be in the presence of something to feel it, that's always been very mysterious to me. But I did think it was a necessity to kind of go there and experience that building for myself, to put my characters into a real setting.
Yeah. Now, as a scientist and somebody who's you're not just weaving technology, science, history, you're weaving some deep philosophical thoughts and things and such. And I know that you are a scientist who believes in evolution and believes in God. Can you talk a little bit about that quantum world, human consciousness, and your thoughts on, I don't know, God, the universe, everything. Throw that one out to you.
I think it's a question we all have, but one of my goals, I guess, for the coming years is to get better at explaining my belief in God to fellow scientists, right? Because I think it's more than just it's more than a mass delusion, and I think that some scientists write it off as that. And I think that there's a lot more going on with human consciousness. There's a lot more going on in the universe and how time passes, how things again interact. And a lot of the things that the early 20th century physicists were arguing about. So Einstein, Niels Bohr, people were arguing about, what is the role of the quantum world? And they were starting to see this new science and things that just didn't make sense. So you have classical physics, where you know that if something like you can't occupy the same space, you can't go to Costco and park in a parking spot that somebody's already parked in, right? You have to wait for that car to move. That's classical physics. Okay, well, in quantum physics, you can park your car in the same lot as parking space as somebody else. In quantum physics, it's a place where miracles happen. We can't actually fathom the things that go on. And then there's a place for human consciousness as well. And there's this old adage that we talked about when we were kids: if a tree falls in the forest and no one's around to hear it, does it actually make a sound? Well, quantum chemistry says, or not quantum physics says, no. Unless you're there to experience the event, the tree doesn't make a sound.
That blows my mind. But it does seem like the rules are different. Like when things get smaller, I don't know, I'm a big fan of Marvel and Ant-Man, but it always just kind of struck my fancy when he would become really small and things just change. The rules change. And I think that's so eloquent the way you put it, that that's where the miracles happen.
We have this and you think about it, we have this undercurrent in our society about dreams and about intuition and lots of kind of stories of this, and these stories have been going on forever and ever. This person can read minds, this person can predict the future. There's just so much of it. What if it's real? And what if it's quantum chemistry that actually, or quantum physics that allows us to do this? If we're all interconnected in this energetic world that we live in, where a thought is a thing, where your destiny is one future that collapses as you live it, then there's multiple futures you could live, but those multiple futures already exist someplace in the universe. And we always hint at it. We hint at creativity and we're like, that person is creative and he can reach all sorts of people and he just has a connection with the universe that other people don't have. What if that's real? So it's really kind of thinking about these things as a scientist and going, there may be real miracles and they may be explainable by science.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And I think it's important to just underscore the fact that you're a neuroscientist. You are somebody who's researching and working in this field, and neurological diseases that you research kind of weave back into this. So I got to ask, how much of you, Mark, are Matt? How much of you are actually, or is actually, your main character?
Well, I don't want to say it's all me. I always like to think of Matt as someone who's taller and better looking, right? But I think his mindset actually does come a lot from me, and I've used the character to explore emotions. They used to say you write your pain. I don't know if that's true. I don't think that Matt tends to be a very painful character, but you use it to kind of sort out your thoughts. You use it to develop your philosophy. And then lately I've been using Matt Miller to kind of dwell into explore this mind, universe, consciousness connection that I think is there. He has, from the very beginning, he's always dreamed vivid dreams. And I think that that's also one of these unexplained things that we do. A dream is not something random. We all know that. So what really is a dream, and why does your brain need to do that? And, kind of these things. And I can't say that I understand them all, but I use Matt's thoughts to kind of hone kind of what I think about a certain thing, and then I write it down on paper.
Well, and if, like you say, thoughts are real and dreams are so much more meaningful, then it stands to reason that the same goes for imagination. And if this is what you've imagined, if you've imagined Matt in this world back in time, perhaps you, Mark, are God to Matt Miller, and everything you created actually does exist because there you.
Well, I'll never claim to be God, but that's very interesting, right? That's a very interesting premise, Desiree. That you create these characters, and are they real? And so are they real in some sense? I was thinking about this just earlier today. You write something down on paper, right? And you create. And is it more than just fiction? And I was kind of thinking, I was thinking a little bit about when you write a sentence and you create an imaginary world, and when you write down a number and you create something, is a number real? And the concept that it represents real, and there's a parallel there somehow. Right? Because math is real. A number is real. A sentence is real. And the scene that you create is real in the same way that a number is real to math. So I don't know if that goes anywhere, but I'm trying to develop that as well.
Yeah. Oh, it's so provocative. And I think that's one of the cool things about your writing and the entire series is it just opens up all of these different questions and possibilities. And, you talk a little bit about world building as a thing. That's one of the cool things that authors, especially within your genre, especially within science fiction, a lot of times fantasy, etc., you get to create this whole kind of universe, and you get to be the one that's calling the shots. Can you talk a little bit about this concept of the universal cloud? And I think you've touched on it a little bit. Can you explain that to me a bit?
So I've been in neuroscience now I've probably been doing research in it now for 25 years. And, I'm going to say this, and my fellow scientists are going to be upset at me, but we don't really understand the brain. We really don't. We're not quite sure how this all works. And we were just talking about dreams. Why do you dream? There's all sorts of things that people put out, and they say, well, you're filing your memories and whatever. But, kind of the more that I look at it, the more, I think we don't. There's some fundamental misunderstanding about how the brain works. There's been, I would say that on all the neurological diseases that I've worked on, over the past 25 years, Alzheimer's, depression, anxiety, cognitive disorder, we haven't cured one of those diseases. And so I think that there's a what we do is maybe we minimize the symptoms. If you have Parkinson's, there's diseases that stop the shaking, but you're still going to wind up with progressive Parkinson's. And so we haven't been very good at curing brain disease. And so it kind of goes to saying that, maybe we fundamentally don't understand the brain. And kind of one of the things that, you asked about this universal cloud, and, I don't know if I ever used that term, but, when I look at neurological disease and the way your brain is kind of set up for you to interact in the world, I think your brain is designed to protect you from the quantum world. We're not actually, what do they say? The whole universe can fit in Foxborough Stadium in Boston, if you squeezed it all together and you filled all the empty space. And so what we really are these molecules that are filling space just because they rotate very rapidly. So we're mostly empty space and energy, right? And so your brain somehow is protecting you from this empty space and this energy, and it's interacting in this quantum world. And the more I look at the brain and the physiology of it, over the years, I've thought, well, what's a memory? And how do we store memories in our brains? And neuroscientists have done, neurosurgeons have done these experiments where when they're doing brain surgery on somebody, they can stimulate certain parts of your brain and their patients. And so you actually do brain surgery when you're fully conscious, right? Because there's no pain receptors. And so you can do all sorts of kind of cool experiments. And one of them is stimulating different parts of your brain. And what people find is they relive entire experiences in their lives. Okay. Not just, I was a kid and I remember, playing with a ball. They remember the color of the ball. They remember all the sounds. They remember all the smells. And so there's this huge amount of data that's going into your brain, okay, over a lifetime. And you can remember back when trust me, you have all these memories accessible to you. All you have to do is figure out a way to stimulate that access. How is this all stored in your head? How's that work? You have this, I can't remember what the brain weighs, 3 pounds maybe, but you have this mass, this lump of gray tissue, and all these memories are stored somehow in those cells, right? And then somehow, like if you get Alzheimer's, right, those memories disappear. Well, maybe all these memories are actually stored somewhere in the universe and your brain is just a terminal. Right. And maybe something like Alzheimer's is not you losing those memories that you always had. It's you losing access to your universal terminal. And again, the more I see the physiology and the more we don't understand it, it makes me curious, this magical thing that's our brain, and what it really does access. And now we start talking about, people who can read minds or tell the future, or have some precognition of events that happen. And now that makes a little more sense, right? Because your brain is interacting, in this quantum world. It's accessing memories that may or may not be memories. Maybe they're just a timeline that has memories. And so there's all kinds of things that you can think about if you start kind of opening it up and saying, yeah, a lot of this information is somewhere else, and we're just kind of logging in and being able to access it.
Yeah, that's kind of trippy. And it just makes me wonder, okay, maybe we are just living in the matrix. Maybe we are computer programs. Maybe we are just robots dreaming of electric sheep.
Right. And those ideas came from somewhere, right? And maybe they're real. Maybe that really is, and that was somebody, and again, artists are connected with the universe way better than other people. And, the creative people. And so they seem to download this information a little bit better. And, maybe it's not just an imagination, it's some real future at some real juncture. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Oh, excellent. So much to think about, but we're running up against the clock. Mark, can you tell people really quick, you got 4 books. Say the 4 books really quick so people know what to look for, and they can find you, where they can find you online and social media. Give us all your details.
Okay, so the series is Matt Miller and the Colonies. The first book is Journeyman. The second book is Prophet. Those 2 books are very interconnected in time. The third book is Virginian. And then the 4th book that will be coming out February 28th, it's already available for pre-order. The Kindle version of it is on Amazon. That 4th book is called Architect. And so these books cover Matt's life from age 26 to 36. So it's about a decade of his life as he makes his way through the colonies. So the 3 books are available in print, ebook, and then also we have the 3 books on Audible as well. The 4th book, Architect, will be on Audible hopefully by the end of February, but I still have to record it. You can go to everything's available again on Amazon, and then also Audible. Then my website, where I have also links to the books as well as my blog. I talk about God, space, time. I talk about writing on my website. My website is markjroseauthor.com. So markjroseauthor.com, all one word. So you can go there and you can kind of see the latest updates. Also, I have a Instagram account. That's also markj.rose. You can follow me on Instagram as well.
Excellent. Excellent. I highly recommend your blog, signing up for your newsletter too, because you do have some wonderful thoughts about science and God and time travel and so much more. Mark J. Rose, author of the Matt Miller and the Colonies series. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Books That Make You show. Appreciate it.
No, thanks for the conversation, Desiree.
You bet. You bet. And thank you everybody for joining us today as well. You can find out more about us on booksthatmakeyou.com. That's our website, as well as we're on Facebook and Instagram, and of course on TikTok. And don't forget YouTube. Make sure you subscribe, ring the bell, and make sure you don't ever miss a show with wonderful authors like Mark J. Rose. Until next time, all of my bookish buddies, please enjoy all of the books that make you exactly who you are.
The host and executive producer of the Books That Make You show is Desiree Duffy. Sound mastering and engineering by Dave Napox. Social media and content promotion by Siddhi Jahagirdar. Copywriting and editing by Mike Robinson. The Books That Make You show is an award-winning podcast produced by Black Chateau Enterprises.